Mr. Krishnitz, you're the first architect that I've heard who had not shown a single image in the presentation. You must be a philosopher, because philosophers never show images. Right? It's always difficult for me to, at such occasions and conferences, to switch from the Central European or Central European discourse to the global discourse, and particularly the discourse that's taking place in the emerging economies or in the developing context. I'm going to talk about India today, and actually, I mean, I'm originally from India, but it never really interested me. I was born there, and I grew up in different places of the world. But however, last year, I discovered India, and actually I've discovered Asia to a certain degree. My intellectual formation was in South America, and our colleague from Brazil, she's not, anyway, that really shaped my intellectual understanding of the city, but I'm slowly discovering Asia, because I think Asia, what's going to happen in Asia in the next 40, 50 years, is going to be absolutely decisive for the whole world. What's going to happen there is interesting for Europe. So, India. I'm going to talk about shifting imaginaries, frothing urbanism, and a bit about smart cities, but I won't go into the critical discourse that we have heard about anyway now. If you go to India now, 2015, I was there just last month, July and August, for a whole month, and I was in 4 cities and was looking into what's going on in the country. If you go there now, you'll see this. This is how Indian cities are like, chaotic, and all those cars and sounds and pollution. Who has been to India, by the way? Anyone here who has been to India? 1, 2, okay. All right, thank you. So this is what's going on. This is the general reality. But if you open magazines today or newspapers, you will see this. Temple bells, intelligent living, Merlin legacy, live by the lake. If we delay, we pay. Wonderful people here, actors from Bollywood. Smart life, everything is smart. Smart health, smart life. And these are the first images of smart cities are coming up. This is one of the better ones, actually. This is a Singaporean company, and you see public spaces. And so this is one of the new capitals of India, which is going to be built in the next years. So what we see happening now, and that's the interesting thing, is a massive, massive shift, or massive shifts in imaginaries, narratives, and the parameters of everyday life. And to actually understand, I mean, I'm going to talk about from the perspective of cities, but to really understand what's going on, you have to look into the culture. This was a cover page on National Geographic. This is mother and daughter. This is within one generation. And that really says a lot. I mean, it's not just, okay, this doesn't need any explanation. This is, by the way, a movie who has just come out. Wonderful movie. I don't know if it's going to come to the halls of Europe, but by the way, in Cannes, it got 2 awards. And of course, French love Indian movies, beautiful movie, but take tissues along. You're going to cry for 3 hours. By the way, it's taking place in Varanasi, which is one of the oldest cities, and actually probably the oldest living city in the world. And it's taking place there, and this couple have met through Facebook. So they chose the setting it was not coincidence. And what we're seeing in India at large is a digital revolution and a sexual revolution, which is transforming society at an incredible rate. So I'm going to talk about the Indian city, because since we are not so acquainted with the Indian city, just to have some images, 5,000 years in 5 minutes, then a little bit of critical reflection, what is the Indian city, and the new urban awakening about the 4 national programs, which will be interesting for you maybe. Maybe in brief, because I'm going to talk about India, but in general, the background, think of what's going on in Asia. I think mostly what's happening in India is what's happening in China, what's happening in Indonesia, and so on. India, I mean, if you look at a city in India, it has most of these layers, prehistoric, pre-colonial, colonial, post-colonial, all of those compressed into one place. And I think someone had said, India is many worlds in one place. And that is what you see in an Indian city. It's many layers. And the first layer, that goes back to 3000 BC, which is 5,000 years ago, and maybe very few people know about this, even architects, I'm surprised. This is a civilization. This was during the Egyptian period, Mesopotamia, and they were connected, by the way. They had the first planned cities of the world. They were actually planned. You have bricks here, which are standardized over a stretch of 1.5 million square kilometers. So it must have been a very organized civilization. And the houses had baths in every house, underground sewage, so something that you don't rarely find anymore in India. This was there 5,000 years ago. Then you have university towns like Nalanda, which was destroyed in 12,000 AD. You have thousands of students from Asia, including Greece. Varanasi, which I had a little project near this city, which is an absolutely incredible place where it's the necropolis of India. It's good to die there, and I am not going to go into any description, but it is most probably the oldest continually inhabited city of the world. Jodhpur, a wonderful city, but you can see the similarity with this layout. Right? Okay, then you have these cities that are built on cosmological principles. This is in South India. And here again, you see a bit of Jodhpur. You see a bit of the Indus Valley cities. Then, of course, you have the influence of Islam, Islamic architecture. Then you have a huge influence of colonialism, particularly the British, but also the Portuguese. Goa, which is very, very Portuguese, and Brazilians who go there feel like they're in Brazil. Some French influence. Now, this is Calcutta, and my grandfather told me, that's the city I was born, he told me that the streets of the city used to be washed twice a day. And it was absolutely clean. And, by the way, talking about refugees, we had 2 waves of refugees, and Calcutta took 3 million refugees within a very short period of time. Of course, the entire infrastructure broke down, but, we have created something different out of it now. Now, the dilemma which began after independence, post-independence, was a conflict between Nehru and Gandhi. You know Gandhi, probably you don't know Nehru, he was our first prime minister, and Nehru dreamt of the modern city. And Gandhi believed that it's the village. When you think of India, the real India is actually the village. And thus, the dilemma began. However, Nehru did try to change that. He invited Le Corbusier in the 60s, and he had built the modernist prototype of Chandigarh. And by the way, it was very close to a city. It's on the layers of an old town which goes back to the Indus Valley. So you have, the grid of Corbu with the Indus Valley. So you have all those layers again. Anyway, but Nehru did not, he couldn't win. Gandhi won. And from the 70s to the 2000s, the imaginary of the village had drawn the entire public money. So the main policy thrust was rural development. This is what I always heard of when I think of India, was rural development. I never heard of urban development in all my years. However, urbanization continued with very little public resource in it, and we have these hugely chaotic cities, which are very bottom-up creations. So, and today, you have the remains of Nehru here, and this is the remains of Gandhi. This is Gurgaon. It's a very modern city, but it's an urbanized village. It's built. It's not really planned. It's a public city which has no basic infrastructures, and it's a very problematic place. But and I think the artist in the morning, the Chinese artist, I'm forgetting his name, what's happening in China, the urbanization of the villages, it's the same thing that's happening in India at an incredible rate, but I'll come to numbers later. This is a project I did last year with AIT, and we found out something interesting. We were actually looking at 2 cities, Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar. That's a tiny city, 200,000 people, Ahmedabad 6 million. But what happened really here, and we did some remote sensing. For the last 70 years, we looked at what's happening. But what really happened is here, a 300, 400% rise in built-up area. And these are all villages. So when we talk about urbanization in India, it's actually urbanization. And this project I did near Varanasi, a little school project, and the farmers are potentially multimillionaires because all these plots are extremely expensive, and they just wait until the prices go up. And it's 12 kilometers from Varanasi. It'll be all cities. In the next 10 years, it'll all become cities. And it's literally thousands and thousands and thousands of villages which are becoming cities right now, every day. Now, what is an Indian city? I mean, when we, against that background, then I found this really interesting term, frothing urbanism. Rahul Mehrotra teaches at Columbia, great guy, met him years ago. And okay, urban landscapes in India are today emerging at a set of disparate conditions spreading across the country, irrespective of city boundaries. These conditions, which form the basis of contemporary Indian urbanism, seem like numerous bubbles frothing in new emergent patterns, transcending conventional notions of city and metropolitan areas. Frothing, it's like foaming and frothing. So I got this little image from Google. Thousands of bubbles burst and thousands get created every moment in the fizz of froth. This bizarre bursting and creation of new bubbles creates absurd momentary realities, sometimes seemingly unconnected. Their lifespans are so short that it's impossible to step back and examine them. Newer realities emerge with increasing frequency. This is the urban reality, the conditio humana in India at the moment right now. And I have three very short videos here. That's a street, the hierarchy of streets in Calcutta. That's a main street, which is very loud and hundreds of cars and so on. Then you have a second hierarchy of streets, which have very tiny shops, and hundreds of shops, and these are the places of encounter. That's public space in India, more or less. And every shop there is like nodes of networks. People come together and meet at those small shops. And then you have very, very quiet streets at the back, which normally tourists don't see. They feel that whole of India is loud, but actually it's very, very quiet at the back. So this is the three hierarchy. And there's something very interesting that I observed. Here, on the main street, there is a shrine. Actually, there are more shrines along the road. And this is one, and this is a short video, just to show you how, in which context, the spiritual space, the significance of spiritual space in India, because India is extremely religious, and it gets manifested on the streets. This is a priest doing a ritual, and family members have come. They're sitting on the street and doing their rituals. That's the main street. Video 1. Video 2, this is one of the inner streets, the second hierarchy street. That bump was something actually bumped into our car, so I stopped moving, but it wasn't anything. Okay, 10 minutes from that street is New Calcutta. Minutes. And this is landing at Delhi Airport, New Delhi Airport. Look at this here. These were all villages 15 years ago. Now, if you go into YouTube, DLF city, that's the private city of India, there's a whole video which tells you how to get to your apartment. or your house. Yeah, the plane lands, and you have the airport, and it tells you that's the way, and then you have different routes. The green one goes to block F and block C, and you have these highways, these colors, and it tells you exactly which lane to take, otherwise you're lost. There you go, and then you see the development, those things that are already there, and those things that are going to come in the future. Wonderful, wonderful YouTube movie. So you see, this is what I saw from the airplane. So this is what is happening in India. Now, how many minutes? Yeah. The urban awakening. 5, excellent. India, there were 2 publications which woke up India in 2012. One was the Indesa report 2012, which said that the urban population of Asia will grow by 1.4 billion by 2050. And in the same report, the numbers came out about India. It's 218 million till 2030. That's 15 years from now. And about 500 million in 35 years from now. That's the increase of population in the cities of India. That's a pretty serious challenge that we have. And when I read this report, 2012, I thought it's actually the cities that are growing. But now I know it's not the cities that are growing, but it's those spaces in between. It's the villages that are growing. And that's, again, a completely different set of challenges that we are having now. And this is the second report. This was an expert committee which had made a report. India's economic growth momentum cannot be sustained if urbanization is not actively facilitated. The connection between economic growth and urban planning, we know about that, and that's something that India has woke up to. Because without urban planning, there will be no economic growth. And the same report said India will need 37 new cities of over 1 million by 2030. That's in 15 years, 37 new cities. And finally, cities and towns are at the center of India's development trajectory. So this is when India woke up, and okay, this is just a number maybe. This is the urban population today. That's the urbanization rate today, about 30% urbanized, very low. Some states are more urbanized than less, but this is sort of the average. And so what we see is, if the urban population today is 340 million, it's going to grow to 590. So it's going to be about plus 250. That's what's happening. That's the demographic shift that's going on. Now, in June 2014, last year, Smart Cities Council. Does anyone know the Smart Cities Council here? Smart Cities Council. New government, one of the first media organs which spoke about the Smart Cities program in India, interestingly. I mean, there were hundreds of articles after that, but this is one of the first, and it has a reason. This is our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, who said, make cities symbols of efficiency, speed, and scale, and 100 smart cities for India. This was last year, June 2014. This is a program which I went to see with my students last year. Between Mumbai and Delhi, they're building 24 new cities agglomerations, and 8 of them are in planning. So it's probably the largest coherent urban planning project of the world at the moment. And we met up the CEO of the project. He's now the Secretary of Industry. Interesting fellow. So we asked him how many people are working at this. He said 20. 20 people working on the largest urban planning project of the world. So I asked him, that's impossible. I mean, he said, well, in India, you can't do such big things with too many people. You need very few people. Anyway, that was interesting. This is August 2015, just 1 year after. Consolidation of 4 interconnected national policy programs. And this is pretty interesting. One is 100 smart cities, and there was a lot of critique talking about, wiring up cities, and we don't have sewerage. So he said, okay, we'll have something else. We have 100 Amrut cities. This is just for basic infrastructure, like water connections and so on. And Swachh Bharat is a cleaning India project, which is sort of interconnected with that. It's all started with an app, by the way. The second is Digital India. This is extremely interesting for education. Then is Skill India, and Make in India is they presented it at Davos in Switzerland. They're inviting everyone, the whole world, to go to India to manufacture. So it's laying out the red carpet for manufacturing. Make in India. I won't talk much about that. That's the Smart City project. This is about, yes, and the Housing for All, it has equal amount of money as Smart Cities. It's about creating 20 million housing units till 2022. And they call it the Marshall Plan for cities right now. That's our prime minister with the three-pronged, and it's $1 trillion. I mean, and there's already money moving, so they're really serious about it. I couldn't believe it, actually. Yeah, and there are already 100 smart cities that have been chosen, and now comes the question about what is a smart city. And I've been looking into this thing for the last 2 years, and I'm not going to go into that, but they have started educating the people of India about what is a smart city. And if you go to the website of Times of India, it's a magazine, it's a newspaper, and it tells you what is a smart city. Right? We won't go into any details, but the first slide shows, or the third one, the next term is identification, blah, 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 conducted by Bloomberg Philanthropies. Bloomberg Philanthropies, never heard of them, but they are somehow involved with that. And then, number 5, Smart Cities Council in India has been formed. It's part of the US-based Smart Cities Council, which is a consortium of smart city practitioners and experts, 100 plus in 140 countries. I've never heard of it. I've been reading up on smart cities a lot. But that's where you see the transfer of knowledge, the global ideas that are flowing, and the corporate interests that are behind it. Now, but however, there is some critique coming up, and this is our Minister for Urban Development. Smart cities should be inclusive. Maybe they learned this from Vienna, because Vienna also says, oh, we are an inclusive smart city, right? And he also says, so a smart city does not mean gated communities or Wi-Fi connectivity. The concept of gated community goes against the spirit of smart cities should be inclusive. That's interesting. That's our. This is the latest news, 20th August. India releases list of 98 smart cities. Literally every week, you can read the newspapers and things are going on. And now Digital India, this is very, very interesting. Digital infrastructure as a utility to every citizen, talking about connectivity. Every citizen, governance and services on demand, and digital empowerment of citizens. And digital empowerment of citizens is about education. And it's reaching out to 250,000 village panchayats. Those are the village polities. So it's basically reaching out to all the villages of India. We have about 600,000 villages and reaching out to about 600 million people. And people had been talking about this a few months ago, but this time, when I was doing this little school project near Varanasi, a village, there was a construction site along the road. So I asked the people, what's going on here? They said, that's the high-speed internet that's going to come in the next months. So it has reached the villages now. Yeah, it's all about, this is one interesting thing. Last year, we went to with our students to a slum area, and this is our professor from Germany, Jens Dankschat, and that's a person living in the slum. And he tells him about the softwares and the things that they use to launch grievances against the city. So the slums have their own apps talking with the city. And these guys, and this one actually you can't read it here, it's about, because not everybody can use the smartphone, so there is a household communicator. It's mostly the young people who communicate, they have taken up. And this time, there are certain things you can't do, like banking or downloading forms. You can't do it physically anymore. I was doing something for my mother in Calcutta, and they said, sorry, you have to download it. This is within a few months. Skill India, and that's about education. And you see all of this in like every magazine. This is, put in magazines, and every shopping mall in India has these huge posters talking about Skill India. That's a program reaching out to 400 million people. These numbers in India are always fascinating. 400 million people till 2022. And interesting is this little thing here. There is a helpline, and you can call them up and ask them about what is the thing that we're going to teach our students? What are the skills needed for the next 20 years or 50 years? And that's the last slide. India, and this is also interesting, this is here, the first sentence here. India should be ready to replace the diminishing workforce in other countries. If we gear up for this and map the skill sets required, not just in India, but around the world, our youth will get a chance to prove their capabilities. Thus, India can become the human resource capital of the world. Last slide. I'll come back to Europe. Michel de Certeau, a very favorite, the city does not look for solutions, it's a story. I absolutely love this. And every time when we try to disarm it, the complexity of the city, it's so huge. And if people come up and say that this is something, repair that, it's absolutely impossible. The only thing we can do is really, create those conditions where people are empowered in a way that we can take over and do our things together. And that's a part of this huge story of urbanization of the planet. Thank you.